Hello everyone and welcome to my weekly update breakdown. This is week 14 and we're going to be looking at what new content was just dropped and how we can make the best use of our hearts and time this week. Without further ado, let's get down to it. So today I'm going to give you guys a rundown not only of the stages you should focus on, but also the order for those stages. And which you should tackle first, so that it makes the rest of your week easier and it makes catching some of the harder stuff a little bit easier. So the first thing we are going to talk about, or the first Pokemon rather, is the great chance a day for this week, which is Cosmoem. Or Cosmoem? Not sure. Cosmoem is a bit of weakling when it comes to AP because it maxes out at 90. He's a psychic type with the skill Quirky++. This skill can be useful for weakened Meowth, as it removes a bunch of Cosmoem from the field and it can help you match coins, but it's a bit outdated to be honest, and it doesn't deal additional damage. In my opinion, these kind of skills kind of need to be updated. Anyway, the reason you want to take on this thing daily, and you only get a chance a day, is because of its rewards. Aside from a 100% drop rate of at least one Cosmoem skill candy, you have a 25% chance of getting a generic small skill cookie and a 6% chance of getting a raised max level. This should be the first thing you do every day when you wake up after brushing your teeth. The next thing we're going to talk about is the Pokemon Safari. If you want to know if it's worth the time, you should watch last week's video where I talk about all the Pokemon that are included and what their skills are. Yeah, so I won't go too much into detail on this video, but anyway, you should finish that this week. Either way, if you want to catch them all and you didn't have the chance last week, you should use the 15 minutes no hearts needed that we get for this week and just keep cycling through the stages until you get the one that you want. And do not be shy about using a Great Ball. It's not worth wasting the time to cycle through all those stages, especially if it's one of the rarer Pokemon. Next, let's take a look at the daily special Pokemon for this week. We have starting Tuesday, Sleeping Pikachu, Winking Torchic, Winking Trico, Winking Mudkip, and Winking Castform. The two worth talking about are only Sleeping Pikachu and Winking Castform, to be honest. The rest of them all have Power 4+, which is an okay skill, but not too helpful given that they have a relatively low max AP. So Sleeping Pikachu, as you may guess, has Sleeping Charm, which is one of the most relevant skills in the game right now, as far as disruptions. Also, something to consider is that these daily Pokemon have a 50% chance of dropping skill candies. So if you need a decent electric sleep charmer, possibly for Whale Lord, farming this will cost you about 200 runs up to level 5, so you can probably get it up to level 5 in 200 runs. Castform, on the other hand, is worth catching but not farming, because the activation for his skill is a 100% on a match of 4 at level 1. So yeah, that's going to be it for the daily Pokemon. Just Winking Castform and Sleeping Pikachu. Let's move on to the challenges for the week. You should do your best to catch Winking Totodile. It's not a very good water type Pokemon, really. The skill it comes with is Swap Plus. I mean, it has a decent activation rate and all, on a match of 4, but honestly, this Pokemon is just a catch. It's very easy to beat, and it's not worth farming. So let's move on. Whale Lord is the next Pokemon we're going to focus on. Whale Lord is another mediocre water type Pokemon, and it maxes out at 110 AP. This isn't great, but with Flash Mob as a skill, you can get some decent damage, especially if you want to farm it or use it. But there's better stuff out there for it. This is also a Pokemon that I think you should ignore for the most part after you catch it. If we're being honest, this is not going to break any water type teams at all. So I would say catch it and move on to the next Pokemon. The one thing I will say is Wailord is like 50 moves or something like that, so it's kind of like similar to Snorlax. So you can get some decent XP if you want to farm it, but honestly, I don't think anyone uses special stages like that. Toucannon is the next challenge. He's a flying type Pokemon with a max AP of 105, so he's not a powerhouse. So his utility comes from his skill Block Smash Plus Plus, which removes 5 blocks off the board and can clean up disruptions. It has a 25% chance of dropping a skill candy, but to be honest, you shouldn't farm it. At a match of 4, it has a 100% activation rate. So really the only thing you're increasing with the candies are the matches of 3. And the percent increase goes from 45% at level 1 to 60% at level 5, which is nothing. That's a ton of investment for a difference of less than 20%. It's like a 15% difference. So it's not worth it. Don't do it. Catch it and just move on. Winking Wigglytuff is pretty much the same story, but the typing is different, and so is the skill. It caps out at 105 max AP. This one is a fairy type, which is useful against fighting and dragon. Anyway, the skill that this Pokemon has is Rock Break Plus Plus, and as mentioned before, it can be very useful in cleaning boards. This week we happen to have a dragon and fighting challenge in Kyurem Black and Shiny Mewtwo, so perhaps you could find some use in that, but to be honest with you, I think Black Kyurem is way too hard to use Wigglytuff on, especially if it's a fresh Wigglytuff, and that skill itself, Rock Break Plus Plus, is not going to be very useful against Black Kyurem. Fighting Mewtwo is not as hard, but there's just better stuff out there. Winking Wigglytuff can be a great asset, but it's also not worth farming. Again, if you make a match of 4 at level 1, it has a 100% activation rate. So just catch it and move on to the real meat of this update. So the first of the harder challenges, or the better challenges I would say, is Palkia. Palkia is a very strong water type monster Pokemon. It maxes out at 145 AP, which makes it one of the highest in the game. He uses a ton of barrier disruptions, so you might want to sleep charm it with something like, I don't know, this week's Sleeping Pikachu, perhaps? This should allow you to get some decent damage on it before it disrupts. I mentioned he was strong, and that's true, but his skills are lackluster in my opinion. He comes stock with Barrier Bash, which is a decent skill, except it's a bit outclassed now by things like Barrier Shot and Barrier Shot Alpha. What confuses me the most about this Pokemon is that its skill swap is even crappier. Whirlpool is a skill I'm talking about, and it's really not horrible, but also not worth the swap, and definitely shouldn't be on a legendary Pokemon like Palkia. Palkia has a huge 28,000 and some change HP, and you get 25 moves to defeat it. It begins with a catch rate of 8%, and you get 2% per move. Catch Palkia and don't worry about farming, since Barrier Bash also has a 100% activation rate at a match of 4. Yeah, and those are easy enough to make. The next 2 stages are the ones I'm going to recommend you focus your attention on in order to make sure you get the most out of this week of shuffling. Let's start with Shiny Mewtwo. This Pokemon is one of my favorite shinies, and one of my favorite in this game as well. I think it's one of the coolest color variations of shinies. Shiny Mewtwo is also a psychic Pokemon, just like the regular one, and it changes once he goes Mega to fighting. He has 2 different Megas, one for X and one for Y. One of them replaces 3 Pokemon of the same type as Mewtwo, or Shiny Mewtwo. In this case, he would be fighting, so he would replace fighting Pokemon with himself. It's decent, but I think his best form is the Y form, and Mega Shiny Mewtwo Y erases. Oh, I'm sorry. I think it's Mega. I have that backwards. It should be Mega Shiny Mewtwo X has the better move. So Mega Shiny Mewtwo X clears off all Mega Shiny Mewtwo off the board, kind of like Gengar. So this essentially gives you a pseudo complexity -1. Add to that the fact that his innate skill is Mega Boost, and you have a great Pokemon to add to your arsenal. However, because Mega Boost has a 100% activation rate at a match of 4, you don't need to farm it. Which is a good thing. I think, this is great because the cost of the stage itself is 300, so this was going to be one of those weeks where you would have to dedicate most of your coins to this in order to get it maxed out. But because Mega Boost is not something that you should farm, you can completely skip that and just catch shiny Mewtwo. The stage itself isn't horrible. You already have some help with Toucannon and Block Smash plus. Use Pokemon that have Shot Out. I would recommend something like Rayquaza because he spawns shiny Mewtwo's. And, something like Rayquaza would deal some nice damage. If you have Noivern, it can also deal some very, very good damage. You get 16 moves to do about 9,000 damage, so you should be looking at doing possibly like 600 damage per move, I want to say. So it's not nothing crazy. I think it's very, very easy to do. So yeah, good luck and hope you guys catch it. The last single Pokemon I want to talk about is Kyurem Black, which is a Pokemon that has a ton of block and rock disruptions. The first thing you will want to bring, in my opinion, is regular Kyurem with you. The reason is he's super effective and you can use it to your advantage when he spawns Kyurem disruptions. So I would recommend you bring something like Mega Rayquaza. If I have to break down the slots, I would say Mega Rayquaza in slot 1. Slot 2 should be Kyurem if you have it, and that leaves you with 2 open slots. Some Pokemon that would help here are stuff like Latios. If you have maxed out Latios with counter, I know the previous week we got an escalation battle that used Latios, and you got to max out counter. So you should have that, or also if you skill swapped it to Hitting Streak Plus, well, it's even better. Also, Shiny Diancie is really good to remove the blocks and the rocks. Alolan Ninetales to use Freeze Plus on him and stop the disruptions. If you have a maxed out Rayquaza though, I would, with Shot Out, I would say you may want to consider not using him as a Mega and instead using Shiny Diancie for that ability to remove blocks. Because you'll be able to use Shot Out. The stage will continuously spawn and give you Zekrom and Kyurem, which are going to feed your Rayquaza Shot Out. Either way, you play this stage. It's tough, and you need to deal about 2,000 points of damage per turn in order to beat it. Once you do have Kyurem Black, or Black Kyurem, you should skill swap it and bring it along because it's very useful. His skill is Block Shot, the same as Shiny Diancie. It's extremely useful, and his max AP is a ridiculous 150. It can deal crazy 2,400 damage on targets that is super effective on with a match of 3. Definitely worth farming, and because he requires 2 hearts, his drop rate is going to be 50% for a single skill booster. If you have already conquered the Safari, I would say consider using this week's No Hearts Needed on this Pokemon. What I will say about this stage is that it's pretty difficult to farm because it's pretty difficult to beat. But this week is not that busy, so I think you can take the time to sort of figure out how to consistently beat it. I personally went with the team of Shiny Diancie, I believe Rayquaza, maxed out Rayquaza, Alolan Ninetales to freeze it. I used Hoopa Unbound to sort of give my attacks, my combos some boost. A lot of people think that this Pokemon is not needed because Shiny Diancie covers the only Pokemon that is super effective against, which are Dragon-type Pokemon. But I disagree. I think, Black Kyurem is a lot stronger, I think. And also, there's no harm in having two Pokemon that have the same skill. You can go double block shot, and if they're strong enough, you'll get through that stage even faster. It'll be even easier, which I think is a good thing. You may have noticed that I omitted the Latias escalation battle in my list of things. As a rule of thumb, I don't like to do the escalations until the following week, so the second week, and I usually don't invest in them enough, a lot. I usually invest only enough to get the skill swap. So this may be the week where investing on this escalation battle is worthwhile, though, but only if you have already maxed out Black Kyurem or Kyurem Black. In that case, you need to decide if you want to skill swap Latias, because at 115 max AP, it won't break into any Dragon team, especially with this stock skill, which is Swap. Hitting Streak Plus is definitely a great damage burst for Dragons, and it has a max multiplier of times 10 on the 6th match at level 5. But that being said, it's not a must, it's kind of a luxury, and you do have to, I mentioned it's a times 10 multiplier. Yes, it is a times 10 multiplier, but hold your horses because it's on the 6th match, which means you have to commit at least 5 turns to get that 6th match and the times 10 multiplier. So that's kind of harsh because it's not consistently good damage. But that being said, keep in mind, next weekend we get Noivern, who has shot out as the skill swap, and that is definitely not something that you want to miss out on, especially if you need something like myself. I really need Noivern in my flying team because my flying teams are pretty lacking. So yeah, it's one of the most useful Pokemon in the game, and next week he is a must. However, if you can afford both skill swaps this week, definitely do it. Looking at my list of Pokemon sort of to skill swap for the following weeks, or this week and next week, Noivern is definitely one. I mean, if you absolutely want the Latias, you could skill swap the Latias, but other than that, it's going to be in my opinion, it's going to be the Black Kyurem. I think that's more important, more essential. So if you don't skill swap it, Latias is a bit useless. So keep that in mind. That's it for this week, guys, and I hope you guys have a fun week shuffling. So to recap, I'm going to go down the list of things that you should do. So the first thing you should do with your hearts every single day is take on Cosmon for that those daily candies and the raise max levels, the chance to get a raise max level. Next, you should finish the safari. Again, use no hearts needed for 15 minutes if you need to. After that, you should catch the daily Pokemon. Farming Pikachu if you absolutely need it or if you want it. Next, you should catch Winking Totodile. Just catch it, move on. Catch Wailord, move on. Catch Toucannon and move on. Catch Winking Wigglytuff and move on. Catch Palkia and move on. Catch Shiny Mewtwo and move on. Then you should catch Kyurem Black or Black Kyurem. And after, you should farm Black Kyurem. And after you do that, you should farm it again. And you should keep farming it until you max it out. Because, again, it is an extremely useful Pokemon, and it's going to be one of your best tools later on. Lastly, if you can spare the time and you can spare the hearts, you should begin the Latias escalation battle. So that's my guide for week 14 of Pokemon Shuffle, guys. Let me know what you guys think, and I hope this was helpful. Let me know if it was helpful. Good luck, and remember to stay calm and keep shuffling.